despite the world as we see it, despite this seemingly limited world, I say limited, some people say, oh no, it's an unlimited universe. You're in a world that constantly causes us to age, eventually pass away. And people try to make that God's idea. They say, isn't God wonderful? You know, the cycle of life. And I think it's really cool, really poetic. Isn't it amazing how there's death and then rebirth and wow, and expansion. It's like gears within gears. And it is really complicated and beautiful, right? The universe and cycles of life. The truth is, God says, Christ says, all of that is bogus. Because in God there is no death. Just because you go, oh no, there's no death because you are born again. God says you're only born again so you don't get too suspicious that you're no longer in heaven. See, the ego tells you, I'll let you be born again, and then you won't have to worry that you die. And God's saying there is no such thing as death. You're not supposed to die. You're not supposed to have anything go wrong. In heaven, you have perfect, eternally, mind you, perfect peace, love, joy. You don't have ups and downs in heaven. Our life is supposed to have a heaven-like feel to it, and it isn't. Hence, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. So we came to the earth plane and we have a world that is somewhat limited. I'm not saying get down on the world or anything. I'm just saying know that you're not going crazy, you're just waking up. When you start to suspect that this world has some problems, you were right. You're not wrong to feel sad that someone died. The only thing is you think you're crying because they died. You're actually sad because when they died, it reminded you you're going to die. And then that reminds you that everyone's going to die. And then that reminds you you're not in heaven anymore. That's why A Course in Miracles has lessons such as, I'm never upset for the reason I think. You think you're upset that someone passed away. No, no. You just don't like the fact that they reminded you that this is not our home. So it gets very deep to understand these concepts. And the thing is, God, try to get this, God is constantly communicating with us. All of us, not just mystics, not just spiritual teachers, everyone is a cell of God's consciousness. We collectively left that group of cells that seemingly left the mind of God, would be like saying a section of the mind, the section of the brain of God called the Christ. We collectively are one, and we seemingly left and separated from God. But God is constantly communicating with us. Not like we think, like, wow, I had a miracle. I heard a friend had a miracle, or somebody on TV had a miracle. They heard the voice of God. Well, the miracle is that someone sat still long enough to listen, to hear the voice. But everybody is actually constantly, I'm not talking about just when you're in a good mood, constantly, God is constantly downloading its presence to us. Let's get that. Constantly. We're just poor listeners. But God is constantly speaking to us. And so the talk today that I'm focusing on is how we misdirect or misinterpret the guidance.
That's perfectly what I dealt with for the last week.
Oh, good. Okay. Guidance. This is cool, guys, because it's not just mystics. It's not just masters. Everyone. The difference between a master of some sort, whether it's a spiritual teacher, whomever, whatever, the difference between them and a common, like a lay person, is simply that they're setting the antenna a bit right, and they're listening. They're training themselves to listen, but that's still a potential problem. Listening is only half the communication with God. Listening, but then you have to properly interpret what you heard. When Moses comes down and says, I have commandments to give you, why is it written on stone? You know why? Because we're so hard-headed. It was like God was saying, hey, you better write this in stone. Because it was a symbol. It wasn't supposed to have to be written in stone. Because even the commandments are downgraded, for lack of a better term. It's the messages. The messages that I hear might be different from you, but they're never different in their original content. They're only different in their resulting form. So Jesus or angels or whomever could speak to 10 different people with exactly the same message. They would all end up writing it differently. First of all, some wouldn't even write it. Some would sing it because it came as a song. Another, it would become a visual program, you know, in some form of art. But others, you know, might write it as words. Wow, I'm getting this message, you know. It's like, you know, when you let go of all, you know, you become one with you. Wow, it's a beautiful thing about oneness. And some of us go, wow, if you get enough of those, they call you, you know, a mystic or a master. Wow, you're like Lao Tzu, or we're gonna the Gospel of Joe, you know. What it's going to be because you heard enough times. Well, all along those masters, even like teachers like myself, when we hear these things and share them, they're as much for us as for anyone else. And when I share them with you, they're as much as for you as for me, and vice versa, like I said. When we share these messages, we thought that the masters, the prophets of Israel, they would stand and speak to the people. It was never also, you know, not to be also for them, because we're in this together. When Jesus is saying things like, love, forgive those who harm you, he wasn't just saying, now I'm not saying he was teaching himself, he already knew this, but when he brought that message to others, he was anchoring it to a new level for himself. And then when he's anchoring it for himself, he's also anchoring it for everyone else. There's this amazing oneness and reciprocation that happens in our spiritual sharing. It's never lecturing at people. I've never felt that I was lecturing at people when I was talking. I always just felt like we're kind of like hanging out. You know, we're a we. You know, and some people, you know, had a hard time even translating and understanding that. Because, you know, you're supposed to distance and arrive, you know, helicopter takes you, you know, to your places to speak, your venues. Then a red carpet, you know, and some teachers actually do that. They want limousines. They want, I mean, some of the speakers that people love and admire are really a pain, you know, to deal with when you're the venue. You know, these people are telling you, I want a limousine, I want a phone in the limousine, unlimited calling. I mean, it gets crazy. You know, one time I went on tour, it was to the Edgar Cayce Foundation, and I went to speak, and the lady, you know, picked me up and all that, and, you know, they say, you know, just, you know, you'll stay at this place and, you know, keep your receipts and eat wherever you want and so on, and then just give us a bill at the end and we'll reimburse you. Well, you know, they're speakers, and they're like, well, I'm going to bring a couple friends, and they're on the bill. And then we go out to eat. Oh, of course, the finest restaurants, and the speakers are running up bills, and then they hand it in, and, you know, you're taxing, you're making it hard for these people that are trying to put on events to be able to afford to do it. But you don't care because you don't know if they'll be there tomorrow, as long as you sustain for another day. Well, I gave my receipt, and I think it was like $1.50. It was like just a few dollars. Because, and I swear to you, this is not kidding. I mean, because I was only, instead for 3 days, I was on tour, so I could only stop for a day and a half. That's why the only a few dollars. But I gave him a receipt from 7-Eleven for my candy bars and sodas. That was it. That was it. And they're like, I think you gave us the wrong receipt. No, that's my food for yesterday. I swear. And they were like, well, this guy's out there, you know. I'm like, that's me. But why do you want to go overboard, right? So, you know, they were saying, you know, these other speakers, we got bills. They wanted limousines. You know, I got a cab, you know, so that probably cost them $20 or whatever. But I got a cab and, you know, went and got my own stuff. So we don't have to be taxing to people. And speakers are needing to remember, teachers, and that means even people that don't think they're teachers. A Course in Miracles, or I'll say it this way, Christ consciousness is teaching us, telling us this, that everything you do is a teaching. When you are behaving, you are teaching. It's not just like lecturing. You're always teaching, so teach only love. Now, part of what it means by that is it's saying you're always teaching through your behaviors. Meaning, when I act arrogant, I'm actually letting you all know that I'm insecure and compensating. I'm teaching you about myself. When I teach you how to relax or, you know, don't worry, be happy or whatever, that's what I'm downloading, and you're getting that that's what that guy's about. Also, you step on my foot and I say, ow, and I hate you, and get off my foot, and you hurt me, and I'm teaching you that I'm harmable. I'm a limited being, and all it takes is to get me off my God center is a little stomp on my foot, accidentally, let's say. Suddenly, I've descended from the highest heavens to the lowest depths of hell because you stepped on my foot. I just taught you, let me just demonstrate to you my limitation of my holiness. So when you say something like, I don't like you for some reason, and we get all wounded, you're telling people that's how certain you are that you are a child of God, which means not very certain, because I reacted. So Jesus is saying that's why when they beat me up and crucified me, I didn't react. I didn't react because I was saying to them, see, the more I'm teaching you, I'm on the cross. There's moments when he's passing out and he's still teaching because he's saying, I will not return hate for hate. I'm going to teach only love. And I mean, it sounds crazy. And he says, but listen, you're never going to have to do it in such extreme demonstrations. So I'm going to do the crucifixion. I'm going to have them beat me up with one of the most horrendous forms of torture, because it's not murder. It's torture that results in killing you. But you're actually hanging there for several hours, slowly suffocating. It's really intense. And they beat you up and stab you and all these other things. And he's like, I'm going to do that. Okay, I'm just going to, I'm going to center. And there's moments when he's like, oh, these people, no. Forgive them, they know not what they do. You got to figure, there's moments, I'm afraid, I'm thirsty. See, that's him demonstrating to us. I'm thirsty. And then they go to give him drink, and he turns his head away. What is this guy? Like split personality. One minute he wants a drink, the next minute he turns away. What he's saying is, I'm thirsty, but I cannot be sustained with water or drink. I'm hungry, but it isn't food. What is it? God. He's teaching even in that moment. He's teaching us. Don't hate them. Forgive them. They know not what they do. He's bringing us the highest message possible. And he's saying, all I'm asking for you to do, here, I'll do this. And they beat and they stab and they spit on me and they're, just humiliating me. Lashes, the number of lashes, because the Romans had torture down to a science. The lashes was one away from what would kill you if you didn't know that. The number of lashes he received was one less than that which should kill a person. So he already was brought to the edge. And still, on his way to the cross, he tells the women at the side of the road crying, do not weep for me. Okay? He's still taking care of people. That's amazing. And he says, so I'm going to do all this. And all I'm asking you to do is not hate your ex. Oh, but you don't know my ex. Come on. Lashes, crown of thorns, stabbing, beating, punching me out, and so on and so on. Ex. He's saying, you guys, please, don't, not only, he's not trying to compare or compete with who had the worst life, but he's saying, don't think you don't have it in you to make it through the worst stuff. You do have it in you. And he's saying, I know that because we're one and I had it in me. You can get through these things. And I don't mean just like, oh, poor me, I'm going to barely get through this divorce or this whatever it happens to be. I'm talking about changing your mind about the whole ordeal. I'm talking about getting into a spiritual state of mind. And it isn't the kind where we're sort of pseudo-spiritual. Oh, it's okay. I'm okay. Everything's okay. I just, love everybody. When in fact, inside, you're getting ill because you're clenching inside without realizing it. I'm not talking about like a fake love. I'm talking about one that first acknowledges something hurts, because that means you're being honest and real. And then being able to say, but I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing to look at my own lessons in the situation and learn to turn it all the way around from like a 180, from completely victim to I get it. An actual visceral sense of awakening. So God is speaking to us constantly. A Course in Miracles says God speaks to me all through the day. God is constantly downloading messages to us. And we typically don't hear. And there are angels, there are masters, there are humans, that help us get those messages. They interpret those messages. They can be messages like, Michael, I'm having a synchronicity happening constantly. They come to me and say, Michael, I have this dream. Would you help me interpret this dream? Yes, because we should all be helping each other as much as we can with those messages, because we're constantly receiving messages. So that's part of the problem. Hearing those messages is half the problem. Remember, the other half is interpreting it properly. So how do I get clear enough to hear it? Because I'm not always hearing it. Why? Spoken like in simplistic terms, it's basically the ego hijacks the messages, beats them up, and then sends them back to you in a different form. Human beings, the way we do this is this. The main message of God is love. I love you, come home. I love you, come home. That's the message of God. It doesn't like change it. I love you more than that one too. Oh, and you've been really great. I really love you. Not you so much. There's no variations like that. It's only I love you, and since we think we're away, come home. And God isn't saying come home as though we did go away. God's saying it, since you think you're away, I'll ask you to come home. Okay, so that means great. Now let's say all night long we all heard that message. I love you, come home. Now, we woke up this morning and we already started translating that message. And I'm telling you, you did have that message last night. And we all started translating it. Now, I love you, come home is translated by one person as, I woke up more loving and I wish I had a partner. You translate it into romance. Another person, I love you, come home. They don't know they heard that, but they're feeling something very deep in the subconscious. They're feeling something about, they don't know it's love, but they translate love into, I'd like to feel good today. And then I feel good today. I'd like to feel good today. Oh, I can't wait for my coffee. I know it can sound absurd. When you desired a cup of coffee, you were downgrading, I'm not saying it like a negative, but you're downsizing, downgrading the original message of love. Now, if you pick up the coffee and say, thank you, God, this is a sign of my loving myself, because I'll feel good and awake. I mean, I'm just kind of presuming how it is to have coffee. I've never had a sip of this stuff, but I know people talk about liking their, well, I like healthy stuff only. So, so I see people, so look at how much people love their coffee. Now, some of us go, do you know what's in coffee? Oh, that's terrible. Caffeine, and it does this for you and that. That isn't God speaking. You're downgrading it even more. But when you catch yourself and realize, oh, I'm on my third cup, I got to have coffee or I can't wake up. Stop and catch yourself and say, it isn't the coffee. What I'm really looking for always is God. I feel separate and I just want God. And today, the symbol of that is this coffee. So thank you, God. In this coffee, I'm using it as a symbol of God. And it changes the vibration of the coffee. A human being wakes up and says, God, again, the message of love, I love you, come home was there. Remember, that's now in the subconscious. We wake up and we're kind of tooling around, starting our day, and then we kind of, God, it's been stressful lately. I just want to feel peace. Now, this is still somewhat subconscious, but sometimes conscious. I just want to feel peace. So you reach for a drink. You reach for a drug of choice, an addiction. Why the drug? Drugs are bad. God doesn't want you to have drugs. No, that's not how God sees this. God says, I love you, and watched you reach for your drug. The only thing if God would feel anything but I love you, which it doesn't, but if it did, it would say, gosh, it's kind of sad that you reached for a drug to feel peace, a pseudo-peace, instead of me that can give you the real thing. You see? And all we're doing is changing it. The person that shoots John Lennon, believe it or not, heard, I love you, come home. He then realizes, I don't know how to feel love. I'm going to take it from somebody else. So somebody goes and rapes and molests and murders. They're trying to get something they don't feel. But they all hear the same message, I love you. They just don't know how to find the love that they're feeling or hearing. That kind of desperation causes an anxiety in us. I'm never upset for the reason I think. I'm never upset for the reason I think. And the good news is, guys, it's always a longing for God. That's all it is. The most horrid form of sex addict. It's the same thing. They don't know it's the same, but I love you, come home. They, on some deep soul level, they're hearing that. Their mind takes it, beats it up, and says, you need a person, a body, to comfort you, to be with you. I did that yesterday. It didn't work. So you need another one. And it's an addiction. And you can go into the most twisted forms of that kind of addiction, and it's still, at some point, look to the person you're with, and even before engaging, go ahead and say, you know what's weird about this? Is I know that it's just God that I'm looking for. Would you mind if you and I concentrate on feeling the presence of God while we do this act? And then you change the act. You bring God, do it with God. Do it with God. Do everything with God. So bring God into everything. And some of us actually think, no, you can't include, it has to include everything. If there's anything on earth that's so horrible that you can't bring God in, you have created hell. Because hell is the lack of God's presence. So why would you want to affirm that? One person is hopeless, but not the rest of us. If one of you is hopeless and we're all connected, you're one neuron in my mind and in my brain that is unholy. I have now a blind spot, a dark spot in my mind. That's okay. We can sacrifice that. It's called collateral damage. So you go into heaven half-witted? It doesn't make any sense. We go all or nothing. That's the rule of heaven. It's a place of oneness. So we can't say, well, listen, we have some good news and some bad news, Lord. Good news is a bunch of us made it. Bad news is a bunch of us didn't. There's a group, because they were pagans, or they were this religion, or they were non-religious. The atheists, they can't come in. They don't even believe in you, God. God would say, what's that got to do with it? I believe in them. So it's like, we make up these stories in our mind to create segmentation or separation. And separation excludes us from heaven. So we're waiting for our own. Everybody getting it. Everybody waking up. God is constantly speaking, but we're just poor listeners. So there's these misdirected impulses. A Course in Miracles refers to them in different terms, but one of them, indiscriminate miracle making. What he means is there are times that we feel a calling, and then we move forward on something, and maybe originally it was semi-accurate in the interpretation. By the time it reaches our actions, it spins out of control. It becomes something else. A person can hear an original, like a song, but by the time, like even the Mozarts and Beethovens of the world, they used to be frustrated constantly because they said, it never translates to paper exactly like I hear it. Well, imagine, those are musical, spiritual geniuses, and they can't get the sound to translate. Just imagine what happens to compulsive addictive humans when it comes to daily actions. So we twist everything into our own liking. We say, even if we believe in God, okay, God, I'm looking for some guidance today, but we're giving it the shape to fit in. I want you to fit into a square hole, a triangular hole, we're doing it like so. So Spirit pours, because it can't not. It never says you're unworthy because you asked for a square peg or a round peg. It never says you can't. It just says, okay, and it pours. Unconditional love. The problem is by the time we translate it, it became something else. It originated always as God. And so we all need to practice checking in to see and learn to see where we took guidance off a little too far to the left or right. And it doesn't make us bad at all. But we are, again, we're making decisions that it should go this way or that way. And the more we learn to clear ourselves out of a situation, the more it'll remain pure guidance. So here's an example. Even mystics, masters that have dedicated themselves to God. And these people are clearly hearing God's guidance. And we read their books and wow, this is great. This is God. Clearly this person was channeling God. But even mystics, they can sit because they dedicate, so they can hear a little better than most because they make themselves an empty vessel. They open up to listen. But even a mystic could hear something like, you are pure and innocent. Now watch what happens. Hello, God. Hello, my beloved child in whom I am well pleased. Oh, that feels great, Lord. How are we doing today? Oh, I just feel great, and I just want you to know you are so beautiful and pure and innocent. Got that? That's what happens for the mystic. And the mystic hears, okay, what was that again? You are pure and innocent. Okay, I'm hearing, I need to purify myself so that I can be more innocent. I will now be celibate and I will fast. All right, Lord? And God's like, oy vey. You know, what's up with you people? So we get this translation. You said I'm pure, and I heard I need to purify myself. That's a good example again. A couple can say, you know, I'm feeling like we should have a child. It starts with, you already have one right here. But they translate it as, we need. No, you don't need to do anything. We have to have a child. You don't have to do anything. Jesus talks about Roosevelt in the diary notes of A Course in Miracles of Roosevelt, saying, I was talking to Roosevelt, telling him, I want you to institute a concept, freedoms it was called. Does anybody remember the freedoms of Roosevelt? These things, they were called the freedoms. Freedom of speech, freedom, and they were making this more known in the Second World War. And Jesus, without saying the words, Jesus is sort of saying, I said to him to send forth to the world a concept of freedom. When they decided to fight for the freedom, they already lost it. You see the difference? He didn't say, he said, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you not to stand up for what's healthy or right, but their interpretation became immediately, go and fight for freedom. So in that moment, it was lost. Nothing's ever truly lost completely, but it was lost means you no longer are hearing the original message. So the freedoms come within, and the speech should have been, I wonder if we as a nation can find freedom within, and happiness and love and respect for other human beings. Could we do that as a nation? Then it would have changed the vibration in the world, and there may not have needed to be war. You don't know, you know. Like Peace Pilgrim says, if people had enough courage, they would be able to use peace to create world peace, not peace to counter hate. When you're still focusing on the enemy, then there's still an enemy. To become that presence of peace so thoroughly, there is nothing else around you. You don't see anything else. And that's a real stretch for most people. So divine inspirations, they enter us, and then they run into our patterns and compulsions, and we translate them our way. Is that all making sense? So take time to look at that. I mean, everything you've ever done. You can say, I married the most unhealthy kind of a person. The original message was, I love you, from God. Somehow you heard. Love translates to unlovable, translates to, but if I can get this person and I to get this right, I'll be more deservable of God's love. And God's going, I told you, I already love you. You don't have to hook up with them. And we hear it differently. Okay? Even the most murderous actions, underneath it, it's a call for love. And we need to learn, center and ask ourselves, how might I answer that call differently? Try first inside, actions last. Of course, some actions are needed immediately. Moving your car before an accident, of course, some things are needed immediately. And we're not asked to judge ourselves when we have those compulsions. Oh my gosh, I messed this up again. Oh my gosh, I went and said yes again to something that didn't feel right for me. You don't have to judge yourself. All we are asked to do, recognize what you've done. You have to pause, breathe, like count to 10 before you speak when you're angry. Pause and just catch it as soon as possible. I recognize what I've done. Then it's important to own it. Not just own it. Own, I think that was a mistake. I think I missed something there. How will you know if you made a mistake and are needing to own that it was you missed something? Because I don't feel peaceful. If love was coming to me, if the message of God is love and I don't feel love, it means I missed something. Love should result in love. Peace, peace. Joy, joy. All of a sudden, love, peace, joy. Oh my God, what have I done? Something went wrong. Recognize you've done it, and then own that it was a mistake. Then, third, call for correction. You know, God, I caught it. Can you just help redirect me? That's all. You own that you're not here, you're over here. It's where we kind of get the figure of speech, I'm beside myself. When I'm not in my center, I'm beside myself. I'm off a little bit. I'm speechless, I'm out. So here I am in my center, I'm now over here. I think something went wrong here somewhere. I can tell by how I feel. Catch it. Own that I made a mistake. Don't blame the other people. You know, I would have been in my center if it weren't for the blaming. Here's what happens. Here's my center. I'm off center and I blame. Watch what happens. When I blame, an arrow of blame goes out. Does that take me closer to my center? The more I fire off an arrow of somebody, blame, it actually is tethered to me and pulls me with it. I don't like that, because then who's going to be responsible? I'm off center. They talked me into marrying them. They talked me into investing in that. They talked, some investment in the stock market and it went bad. But and I know that that's what seemed to happen in this world. That's what happened. Fine. But are you more centered when you said that? No, but somebody's got to take the hit. And it's not going to be me. So then you'll just remain off. It's very important for us to learn to say, snip the cord to the arrow. Even if you fired the arrow already, snip the cord. And then walk your little self right back here and say, oops. I release the need for that arrow to land on anyone. And instead, I'm going to come back here and own, I think I made a mistake. What mistake? You can just say this, I have no idea. I just know I made one because I don't feel peaceful right now. That's all you got to do. See, people will tell you have to, know each piece. That's the ego telling you have to know, because you'll never know all the details of everything ever. So that's, an endless search, which the ego would like to get us on. Instead, I don't know. I just have a feeling. I can tell something's off. I have a feeling I must have done something, thought something, judged somebody, and it's because I don't feel peace. So I'm giving this to God, and I'm asking for some help redirecting. And then in comes the Holy Spirit, the Divine Mother. She comes in and she starts helping to redirect, and she'll change some neurons in our mind and help us see things a little bit differently. And then all of a sudden we start to feel less. You won't always immediately have some miraculous vision of some kind. Sometimes you just feel less angry or hurt. And that's actually a miracle, because nothing happened significantly on the outside sometimes to shift you from upset to non-upset. Nothing happened, then that means something supernatural happened. And that's the definition of a miracle. So you shifted a little more, peace. When you recognize that you have a craving towards something, all of our compulsions and addictions, all we have to do is own. That's the first place to start looking for when you took love and steered it into your direction. It's the easiest place to look. There's the dramatic things to look at, like one-offs that happened this one time this year, but there's also the things I do all the time. Every time I get sad, I go and eat chocolate ice cream, as a lot of people talk about. Oh, when I'm depressed, I got to do chocolate. Whatever the compulsion is, I'm telling you, what you want is God. And what you're doing is, I'm upset. Now I'm really aware that I need God. But I don't see any God around, but I got something pretty tasty in the fridge or freezer. And so you go and you fulfill. It's an addiction again. I'm not saying don't have the ice cream. What I'm saying is, on your way to the fridge, you can say, or even when you dished it into your bowl, you can say, I get it. I feel such a strong compelling here for this ice cream, but it will not sustain me. What I really want is love. So somebody broke my heart. Now I'm interpreting love as being harmable, which it is not. But I'm thinking of myself as a fragile human being, and this is really important to catch on to. I'm a fragile human being. This person hurt me. I need ice cream. So here's what happened. I'm actually a divine being, but I mistranslated divine love into human love. When my human love got retranslated by the ego to be something I relate to with two people, human beings. What human beings? Their bodies. You and me, people. Now, when you said you don't like me, my personal self, my human, fragile body self was wounded. Now I need some ice cream. Here's why. You have just convinced me that I'm only a body, so I need physical things. When I have physical events tempt me, trick me into believing I'm a physical person, I'm going to need physical stuff to fix my physical problems. And you've been tricked. The ego will always mistranslate divine inspirations, and its goal is always the same. You are a fragile, limited being. So when you reached for the addiction, you confirmed, I'm a body, I need some chemical, my drug. I'm a body, I just need other bodies. And then you can put the sad face, but I'm lonely. I mean, you don't want me to be lonely. You can do all that. It doesn't matter. You're still affirming one thing. I'm a limited human being. And the ego's behind that whole, case. So when you say, you know what? I get it. Man does not live by bread alone. Were you remember hearing that before? That's when Jesus was being tempted to forget who he is. And, hey, Jesus, you're hungry. You've been fasting for 40 days, 40 nights. Why don't you turn the rocks into bread? He's like, wow, that's a darn good idea. If only I were a body with a stomach that thought I was empty, having fasted for 40 days, kind of empty, bread would be really kind of cool right now. Especially if it was a Cinnabon. You ain't Cinnaboned till you've done the, deserts of Judea Cinnabons. So you need a Cinnabon. What did he say? What did he say? Man does not live by bread. So now think of that in your life. When someone's passed away and you say, I'm sad, they're gone and lonely, and they're gone. Like you literally are making them a limited being that could die, and you're making yourself a limited being that could feel sad without them. None of this is true. In God, none of that has happened. It just appears so. So we start to catch ourselves and we watch and see our compulsions. Mine are when I'm lonely. Mine are when I'm sad. You'll know because just track down your addictions. Oh, I'm not feeling very good. I got to go on a shopping spree. You're saying behind the shopping spree, I am not a child of God. I am a limited mortal who can do limited human things to make my limited self feel better. And it doesn't work, which is why you will do it a second time, which is why it becomes an addiction, because it never works. So nothing we see means anything. Nothing on this planet means anything. And this is going to get just a little weird for a moment, but we look at the world, we never see anything as it truly is. And I've shared this a couple weeks ago and on, off and on here and there. But when you look at the world, you look at a star, remember, that's a very obvious one. When you see starlight, it can be thousands of years old. The flicker took that long to get here. So there's like a scientific version of you can see something that's not even here now. It's not even there now. It's not. That's one example. But then we say, well, but that doesn't apply to things that are like right in front of you. If there's any distance at all, there's a separation. The starlight just becomes a greater metaphor of it, more exaggerated. The fact that I think you're outside of me means there's still a time lapse. I never see anything as it truly is. I never see anyone as they truly are. So when you look at a person, you can look at me, and for the first few seconds, you spontaneously, let's pretend I just flashed into the room. You have 3 seconds, look at me, and then 2, 3, done. What did you see? And a male, you're wrong. Female, you're wrong. Brunette, blonde, you're wrong, you're wrong. You're only seeing what your brain thinks it saw. You're never completely, on earth, we're almost never really tuned into the present moment to say, because you wouldn't look with your eyes if you wanted to know what somebody was about. Blonde, brunette, gay, straight. None of that would click. One of you posted something in my Friends of Michael Facebook page as a cute story about these 2 boys. One black skin color, one white skin color. And they both went and had their heads shaved. They thought, let's trick the teacher and they won't know which one of us is which. If we had the same haircut. Isn't that sweet? I mean, I just love that. It's amazing. There was a special I saw somewhere where I think it was two girls. And they said, you know, we're sisters. And the teacher would be like, you're not, we're sisters. One was black, one was white. And we don't live with the same house, but they were convinced we're actually sisters. You know, and the teacher's like, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to explain this. And you shouldn't. Because you're going to try to use the obvious. Don't you see the skin color? No, thank God. If we could see, you would not be able to see it. So fighting for a color will embed that there's different colors. I'm not saying don't stand up for something that's not healthy or right. You know, that's something that's cruel or hurtful. You know, but imagine where we just out of that. I can't even see it anymore. Now, if all I do is try to train myself to not see colors, I'm still only halfway there. What I want to do is not see them, but ask God to show me what's really there. If I don't plug into God, I never completely shift my seeing. So that God piece is absolutely vital. So we're constantly thinking that we're seeing things, but here's what's happening. When we're thinking with our human brains, the ego uses your lower mind, your analytical mind, and your brain. Your soul and the Holy Spirit uses your heart. So the heart doesn't see, it feels. The brain will calculate, and here's how it works. I mean, I've shared this before, but so I'll be very quick with it. But the way medical science understands the brain to work now is like this. I open my eyes, I see, and I go, male, light-skinned. You know how they are. That's what it does. The brain actually summarizes and makes everybody the same. You know, all white guys about that height, they're all that certain way. You know how blondes are. That's what it does. You know, blacks and whites and this and that. The brain actually will only tell you what's in front of you based on what it has been told in the past. So they're called blind spots. You never, like you look in this room and you get a pretty complete picture. Do you know that in your brain you're not actually getting a complete picture of this room? This is how the brain works. I'm standing here, I'm looking at the room. Right now, my brain does not even see sections of you in this room. It just caught a glimpse a moment ago, and now it's taking those and plugging them back in because I assume you're still there. The brain's actually assuming and summarizing. It's said to try to conserve energy. The brain does this. You know, we already know that you folks are over there. I don't have to know you're there now. You were already there a minute ago. So it takes a flash of that, plugs it into the now, but I'm actually seeing the starlight from moments ago. So it's intimidating, and the Course tells us in workbook lessons that recognizing that this is happening, if people could actually see what they're really seeing and not seeing, they would become terrified. If suddenly a block of this room is gone, I think I have vision problems. But actually, when it happens, you're getting your vision back. You're starting to see the vision that isn't true. And then eventually, if you work with God on this, it'll plug in something new. And all of a sudden, sections will go from there to not there to there again, but light. So there's a song. First there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. Donovan, what he was saying was actually an Eastern mind training technique. First you look and there's a group of people. There's 3 big sections of people in this room. So first there is, then there isn't, which means my brain starts becoming more honest and I start to see blackouts. Sections of the room disappear. Now there is no mountain. And then there is means the real it, the more real it starts to show up. First there's a mountain intellectually, then there isn't because I'm being philosophical, and then there is, I'm a mystic. Intellectual to philosophical to the mystic. And all of a sudden I'm seeing things differently. And he's telling us in the Course, when you start to see this, it engenders fear. You start to realize, I'm afraid. Why? Because what I think is there is actually not there. So the ego doesn't want you to get suspicious, so it plugs things in so that you think you see something. It'll plug in not just images, visual images, guys. That's how the eyes actually work, the ocular system. But besides that, it's plugging in feelings. Like it already tells me how I should feel about you before I've even met you. That's why sometimes in a room you noticed, you looked and you went, wait, for a second there, that person wasn't there. Because they're not. The whole world is a hologram. There's times when you meet people and you go, you know, you're totally different than what I would have imagined. Really what you're saying is, I am so disturbed. I had made a preconceived idea of what you're about. And I'm so glad, and I love saying this, I'm so glad I was wrong. Just say that all the time. It's a great affirmation. Because anytime I think I see something, I was wrong. If I'm seeing with these eyes that are connected to this brain that's being driven or run due to being hijacked by my ego, I'm going to always be wrong. Not wrong like bad, just mistaken. It's not what I think it is. I remember one time I met an uncle I had, you know, or whatever, in maybe middle school. And I remember, you know, he was talking to me. And he was surprised that I was talking about deep stuff. He was an older uncle. And he was surprised I was talking about deep stuff. And then he actually slipped and he said, you know, you're nothing like they say you are. Which he accidentally copped because I knew, you know, this family didn't like me at all. So he was telling me about how people in this other state where a lot of the family lived, how they talk about me. They don't even know me. But they were given feedback from one person. It spreads, they now make an assumption, and then that's all. They're running on that automatic pilot. Oh, that's how Michael is. This guy had the wherewithal somehow to go, wait, this isn't computing. It's not fitting into the little system I have. But now what about all of us? What about people that have pigeonholed you into something, and it's happened to all of us? And then what about times you've done that to others? And that's when it's right to just go, you know what? I make no decisions alone. Instead, I choose to make them with God. I know nothing like Sergeant Schultz on Hogan's Heroes. I know nothing. That's a great affirmation. It sounds demeaning, but it's actually halfway to enlightenment. When I say I don't know, then I can be taught what to know. And that is how to think like God, how to be like God, how to feel like God. So we get out of alignment, and there's a way to get back in, but you can't get back in if you don't recognize you got out of alignment. Wow, so my ego's made up all these stories and these assumptions. I'm in on everything, not just on like racism, on everything. I was wrong about everything, and I'm so happy to be wrong about it. That's an empowering thing if you really understand it. But it's like, wow, I don't know anything. I don't know what anything is for. Up and down. Certain foods are good for you and bad for you. No. I know that that's what you're told. That's what you're sold. And if you step out of that, somebody's going to tell you you're wrong. But to thine own self be true. You know, doctors told my mom when I was, you know, like probably 10-ish, he will not survive months or even a year or two at the most if he doesn't eat anything. And it's like, here I am. You know, and far healthier than probably any of them were that were talking it. And I'm not saying you should eat wrong. I said I did what was right for me. Take care of yourselves and be doing what's right for you. Stay in alignment for you on all topics, including who you date and whatever else. You know, don't marry somebody because your mother says that's the one you have to marry and I don't like that other one. You know, no. Center. Ask God for guidance. God is speaking to me all through the day. So in other words, don't look for guidance the way we traditionally look for guidance. Instead, learn to get out of the way and the guidance would be there. Because it's already there. And it just comes through and it comes through. It comes through as guidance and it comes through as a song and it comes through as practical stuff like, you know, that probably wouldn't be the best decision to buy that or do this or whatever it happens to be. God's voice is speaking to me all through the day, and its voice is saying, I love you. And if it loves me, it's going to gear me, steer me towards the right foods for me right now. That's all. And it's going to steer me towards, you know, how to handle a challenged relationship. You know, people call me for counseling and guidance on different things, relations and whatever else. And you know, it just comes through. Whatever I need to be able to share with them at the given time. It starts coming through. If you're a healer, you understand too. You tune in and things start happening through you. You're kind of getting in the zone. It's that Zen kind of thing. That thing is supposed to not only be there for everyone, but it's supposed to be there all the time. Some of us say, wow, when I tap into, when I'm doing readings, wow, I can channel perfectly. But then in my personal life, I'm all messed up. What you're doing is, again, you're misdirecting guidance, and you're segmenting your deservedness, your deservability, and it's supposed to be in all ways. So Jesus says in the Course, I was talking to the apostles, I was guiding them, they were great, they were really great, they were dedicated, love it, love it, love it. But they were still humans who had their own thoughts and translations. So some of them thought, you know what you're supposed to do? Jesus, there's a name for what Jesus did. For some people, they called it martyrdom. Then there was no better way to die than being a martyr. So most of the apostles died horrible deaths because their heads were telling them the best way to show God I love him is for me to die horribly. That again is mistranslated guidance. They took something that was I love you and said, I got it. I'll be right back to you. Horrible death. Get to the other side. Did I get it? No, you actually didn't. You're going to have to go back and, let's do death light next time, Something a little, easier. So, we learn to be in constant communication, mostly through humility. Yes, a certain amount of effort, we could call it, like discipline. I'm gonna do my best to pray and meditate. But don't make the things a ritual of I'm not deserving unless I pray and meditate. Do it because I am deserving. Do the things on a positive note. Don't not drink because it's bad. God's going to judge me. Connect with God and you'll recognize you don't need to. That's the tracking. Why do I drink? Why am I doing drugs? You're doing drugs because you're an anxious person and it chills you. You like the peace that comes from it, except it doesn't work. That peace can only come from God. And it sounds like I'm saying something religious, like everybody's got to become all holy rollers and you be who you are, connect with God and be who you are. Martin Luther said, cling to Christ and sin boldly. It's a really great statement, like be who you are. Kenneth Wapnick, he's like the godfather of A Course in Miracles. He's like the master, And he was really strong about, look, don't try to fix yourself and be all perfect. Relax and let yourself recognize that you're already perfect. By relaxing, you'll find that perfect self more than by trying to fix yourself to find it. Because when you're trying to fix yourself to find it, you've already affirmed it isn't there. So chill, relax, it's okay. And there's a thing that he says in A Course in Miracles and that Edgar Cayce used to say that I don't hear mystics and masters say, but it's one of the most important tools in our, available to us on the path. He says, and Buddha got this too, ask intelligent questions, such as, what is this for? What is this about? You look at somebody, it's kind of like, whoa, kind of a craving, attraction. Stop and say, what is this? I'm a holy child of God, yet I'm feeling pulled into an attraction for you. This is how you should, do this. The mind, the talk, self-talk. What is this? Let me check in. What's this? Tracking, kind of, This, I'm feeling like compelled over there where you are, off of my center. What's this about? And then you look inside and you realize, oh, wow, I just remembered it's a self-esteem thing. I was starting to feel low self-worth. So feeling an attraction was kind of like a supplemental nutrient, It was going to fill me, but it doesn't. Or it's my old shallow patterns, or whatever else comes up for you. I'm wanting a drink. Why? I know it sounds weird, but just practice it. Why? What do you mean, why? I just like it to have a drink now and then. Really, why? And so Jesus says in the Course, this is one of the meanings of, I want you to become as children. Remember that saying? Only as children can you enter the kingdom. So what he says is, one of the translations was, to be as children means to learn to ask questions. Why? Why is that, Mommy? Well, we don't like their kind. Why? You know how men are. No, why? Women, blondes, brunettes, or whatever. Learn to ask questions, because when you do it intelligently, rationally is the word Buddha used, you end up dispersing it. Like none of it makes sense. Because the ego is capable of being logical, but never rational. It is good at dealing with quick fix questions and answers. It never really answers anything, but it knows how to throw in quick things at you to make you kind of off center. But it never gives you any solutions. It never gives you any final outcome. It never tells you where it's going to take you if you take that piece of candy from it. And if you could see where it's going to go, you make one little steering off this direction. Those of you who are pilots know. And when you lose your bearings and you steer off just a little, you don't know that you're not flying level anymore. And it happens to us in planes. Unless they make a really fast, dramatic move, they can make a move gradually. You never even notice it. You look outside and suddenly you're seeing the sky up above instead of to the side. And it can kind of startle you for a moment. That's what happens. The ego steers us often so insidiously, so slowly off that you never realize you're no longer in your center. So, I'm just going to bargain this one time. I'm usually with good integrity about who I date, but, it's just one time because I haven't been with somebody in a while, so a little. And then that little one, often, man, that didn't work. I'm going to overcompensate now way over here for twice the distance over here. And then you overcompensate. You either keep going this way or you try compensations. And none of those are healthy. And we're not in our right mind to even know what healthy is anymore. So what ends up having to happen, oops, I can see that something's off. And I know and I will own that it can only be in my choices that I steered off somehow. I get it and I'm asking for correction. I surrender whatever it was that got me off center. I give it all to God and I surrender the outcomes of those decisions. What I choose instead of it is to be refilled with the presence and the guidance of God. God, what would you have me do? How would you have me feel? What direction would you have me take? Don't expect immediate, definite answers like print out on your, computer printer. Suddenly, hello, it's God here, and here's your guidance. It could be that. It could be synchronicities. It could be spontaneous, dream moments. It could be visions in your meditations. Don't know, because it could vary per person. And every person can have 5 different ways that it'll show up in one given day. But we started today and we're ending today, the message anyway, with imagine that God is constantly speaking to you. When we've made mistakes, we misinterpreted or misdirected the guidance. It was always love. Always love. I love you and you are enough. There's nothing you need to do to become enough. You don't need to purify. You are pure. Is it, God's saying, is it enough for me to just tell you that? Are you okay with that? Or do you doubt me? Well, God, you probably don't know some of the things I've done. Then you wouldn't think that. That's how we think, guys. And then sometimes we think, well, it wouldn't be very responsible of me if I didn't beat myself up a little bit. There's all kinds of head talk we have, and it's got to go. God speaks to me all through the day, and now I'm choosing to listen. So the affirmation to yourself, God speaks to me all through the day, and now I'm choosing to listen. Because we've been poor listeners, that's all. All right? Fine-tune that dial, got it. You can tell when you've dialed in, instead of it going shh to each side, you can tell when there's a feeling of love. Then you know you've locked into the station. Love meaning anything like love. Peace, happiness, joy, connection, oneness. You know you've dialed in. And then try to stay on that course. Please take a few centering breaths. Centering, calming. Now, let's take a moment to view some decisions we've made in our lives. Let's just start with the last year. And if your soul tells you to go back to a distant memory, that's fine too. Let's go to a couple of decisions that we have not liked in our lives. Something we're not proud of. Something that might have caused a loss in money in investment somewhere in the market. A decision with relationship. Become aware of 2 or 3 if you can. And then take a moment just to assess the huge contrast between total love of God and the decision you made. Just let that be vivid for a second. Now, how can we bridge the two? If it started as this total peace, joy, love of God, and it ended up in my decision, ask yourself why or how you might have ended up with the decision you ended up with. How did it go from pure love, and try to track it and see how the wording changed. I love you, honey. I love you, God is saying. How did it end up in whatever it was? Did I love you become you thinking you don't deserve? Did I love you? How did it get off? From I love you, how did it end up loss, hurt, hate, competition? It takes a little imagination, but play with it for just a half a minute. Now, if we were to say to ourselves, what are we supposed to do about it? When we steered off that far, how do I get back to center? How do I forgive myself? First, the thing you've done, when you mistranslate it, can you own that that may be a pattern of yours? Not just mistranslating, but that particular type that you did? Like the undeservability? However you steer it off, can you see that it's possibly a pattern and you've done it in more than one way? And then how would you deal with it? The best way to deal with it is, what would you tell an 8-year-old to do? What would you tell a child you loved as far as advice on how to deal with that? Would you tell them that they made a big mistake and they're going to need to reincarnate to fix it? What would you do? How would you tell them to deal with it? And just talk to yourself as gently as that. You can even speak to yourself with words like honey or dear one, and then give it that advice. Dear one, it's okay. We all miss it sometimes, but now I get it. Let's start making decisions that are related to self-worth. Let's make decisions that affirm that God says we are holy, and we really are. Let's make decisions that reflect deservability, and so on. Do that for just a moment. And then in your own way, quietly give thanks. And when you do, give thanks in a way that means that you got it. That your exercise, your meditation accomplished something. You're not just giving thanks because it's done. It's, I'm giving thanks like, and so it is. When you're ready, do that. And you can draw your attention back to the room. Gradually stretch out, please.